issues with your microphone, Chairperson Trom.
With my microphone, is it better now?
It sounds much better now.
Okay. That was okay. So, Cynthia, are you able to take the roll?
I certainly am.
That would be great. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. This meeting's being recorded. Chris June Kiliani.
Here.
Professor Ann Fromm.
Here, thank you.
Laura Fitzsimmons.
Here.
Rob Tellis.
Here.
Julie Kavanaugh Bell.
Here.
Joni Eastley.
Yep.
Lorinda Wickman.
I'm here.
Dave Mendiola.
Dave is here.
Jeff Wells, I believe, isn't here today.
Yeah, he can't make it today. He had some personal appointments that he couldn't make.
Thank you, Drew. Drew Christensen.
I'm here.
Kate Thomas.
I'm here.
And Justice William Maupin.
Is that it?
We have 10 people.
Excellent. Good. Well, welcome everyone. I don't know if that's coming from me. I'm okay. Well, sounds a little better. So welcome everyone. We have a bunch of guests who we're really excited to have with us today. So let's start with the public comment. I see people are on the line, so I'm not sure if any of our guests want to make a public comment. Anyone? I think stop me, but hearing none, let's move on from the public comment and approve the minutes.
Sorry, Chairperson Trom,
Yes.
you also, this is Sophia Long, your Deputy Attorney General. You also, on your agenda, have a procedure for public comment via email. Was there any email public comment that was submitted?
Thank you, Sophia. We have not received any email public comment.
Good. Okay. Thank you for that, Ms. Long. So can we approve the minutes from our last meeting, which was on September 24th, 2020? And I think that those were circulated to you before the meeting. Does anyone have any corrections to the minutes?
This is Chris. No, I didn't see any, so I'd be happy to offer a motion to adopt as submitted.
Thank
This is
you.
Joni Eastley. I'll second that motion.
Thank you. So all of the board members, if you could say aye if you're in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. We just picked that vote, but I was actually present at the meeting.
Oh,
I'm so
okay.
sorry.
Yes,
Excuse
I
me.
see.
This is Rob Reyes.
Thank you. That can be noted. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. I will amend my motion to correct the minutes by adding Rob's name.
Thank you. Do we have a second on that?
Well, the second it concurs with the amendment.
Thank you. All of the board members, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed to
Aye.
the minutes? Okay, hearing none. The minutes can be noted as approved from September. Thank you. So I believe that we have a new board member, Bevan Lister from Lincoln County, and my understanding is that he was just appointed at the end of last week, I believe, and cannot be here today. So our goal is to welcome him probably at our December meeting, at our next meeting, which we believe will be in December. The next item on the agenda is the vote for the new chair and vice chair. We thought it would be better to just wait on that until December so that Mr. Lister can participate in that vote and we'll all be there. So we thought we would just hold off on that, and I will continue today as acting chair. Okay, I think we're to item number 6. So Marcy Riba is here from the department. Do you want to give us your update?
Thank you. Yes, just a really short update to let the board know what's going on with our weighted case study. Our advisory group had our first meeting. We sent out marketing materials to a lot of the counties, and I did rope in a lot of the members when we sent those letters out so that you could reach out to your county to encourage them to sign those letters. We have established our focus groups, and they are scheduling those meetings for early December, and our time study will take place January 25th through March 5th. So it was a very productive advisory group meeting, and everyone is excited to be on board. So I think this is moving in a good direction.
Excellent. Okay, so our next 2 items are a presentation from Legal Server, followed by another presentation from John McCormick and Hans Jessup and James Popovich. So the focus here is thinking a little bit more deeply and getting educated on data collection. So Aaron Kraus, no, I'm looking.
Yes.
You're here, okay. And would you be so kind as to, is Michael Hofrichter also here from Legal Server, but you're giving the presentation?
Yes, I'm going to say a few words and then introduce Steve and Michael, and then Michael will provide you all a little bit of a demo today of the system.
Okay, go ahead, take it away. Thank you so much.
All right, great. Well, this is Aaron Kraus. Great to be here today. I guess I'll just start by telling you guys a bit about our mission as an organization, which is simplifying work for those who help people that can't afford legal representation or vulnerable populations across the United States. With that mission in mind, we don't provide our platform to for-profit law firms as an example. We only work with nonprofit civil legal aid and then public defenders in the United States. We work on the civil side of things. We work with Nevada Legal Services and Washoe Legal Services as an example. And so we're delighted to now be embarking on a project here with the Department of Indigent Defense. And we have had some conversations as well with Clark County and Washoe County, and hoping that at some point here in the next couple months, they come along and join our platform as well. My role here at the organization, I've been with Legal Server about 4 years, is to work with new organizations or counties that are considering a positive transformation in their case management environment and interested in what we can provide them. So I work with organizations throughout the proposal process, the contract process, and then get them started with our team. Our people at Legal Server are really a significant asset for working with our platform. All of our people that work at our organization are either attorneys or or came from working at a organization where Legal Server was deployed. So when it comes to deployment or configuration of our system and the support of our system, we've got a lot of tremendous resources to leverage for what you all are ultimately trying to accomplish there. We're really at the beginning phases of the project here with the department. Michael Hofrichter, who's on the call here, I'll have him introduce himself in just a minute, is your lead onboarding specialist here at Legal Server that's going to be working with you all throughout the project to help configure and set up all of the workflows and various aspects of data collection and reporting that the system is going to be needing. One of our strong differentiators with what we provide is our unique methodology for deploying the application, where we go through a very iterative process of configuring the site and setting it up to how you ideally want your processes to operate. If you look at a lot of software applications on the market, in many cases, the organization or county is having to adapt or adjust their process and how they do things to how the software works. We take the opposite approach, and we work very closely with our clients, and we modify and configure the system and a lot of base capabilities that a public defender would need to be using, and customize that to ultimately how you all want to be operating there. We definitely understand through all of our time talking with Marcy and the team the importance of reporting and the reports that the system can generate. There's a lot of built-in reporting that the system can provide. Michael will, I think, touch on some of that in his demo today. And then one of the other really cool features of our application is that it's a no-code application. I don't want to get too technical on this call, but one of the important things that will be important to note in having a legal server in your environment is once you're live and using the system, you'll be able to easily modify the site over time as your data collection or your reporting requirements change, or there's aspects of the site that you want to modify or enhance through process automation. You'll have a lot of control over those site changes without having to write complicated software code or without having to call us to do that sort of thing. One of the aspects of the interaction that Michael will be providing and the training that we'll be providing, a few folks there that will be named the site administrators, is having that control over doing a lot of those site changes that I described. So we're also happy to have Stephen Rapp on the call here today. Steve heads up our public defender practice here at Legal Server. So why don't I turn things over to Steve to do a brief intro from his perspective, and then we'll turn things over to Michael to start showing you guys a few things.
Hey, thanks, Aaron. As Aaron said, my name is Stephen Rapp, and I'm the team lead of our public defender unit, so to speak. As Aaron alluded to, I was on the other side of the trenches at one time too. I was working for a legal aid agency as their technology specialist, and we had made the transition from one case management system to Legal Server as well. And so you could say that we drank the Kool-Aid, and Michael's in the same boat too, but I'll let him talk about that. But the point there is that not only were we happy with the transition, I eventually found my way to working for Legal Server, where I've been for about 3 years now, because I'm really excited about the software and helping other groups with that same experience of onboarding. Today, my role is more just to be Michael's little helper, so you probably won't hear from me much, but if there's some hard questions, I'll try to help answer those, but Michael's going to be the main lead today. But I appreciate your time and your willingness to listen to us. We like to share, so hopefully you'll find some interest in what we have to say. And I'll pass it off to Michael.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Hofrichter. I'm one of the onboarding specialists at Legal Server, like Aaron and Steve both said. My background is I was a legal aid attorney for almost a decade, where I started as an intern at the organization, rose through a lot of work to become the executive director of a legal aid organization here in Houston. And then I switched over to Legal Server because I really enjoyed doing the tech side of things a lot more than the HR management side of things. And so now that I now get to do what I really enjoy for all sorts of groups, and I really appreciate that. So one of the things that I was going to go through today is to open up the site that we've created for you. So one of the really important things that I think that Legal Server does is you don't just have one one database, right? You actually have two. And right now, the site is only for, we have a demo site that's now available for your organization, right? That's available for the Indigent Defender and Indigent Defense Services, right? But then when it's time to go live, we'll leave the demo site available and we'll have a copy of it made that's your live site. So you've always got a playground to play in, to test new features, to test reporting, whatever you need to do, you can do on your demo site instead of on the live site that's got your actual live case data. And so in the system, right, and this is clearly still being built out. So one of the things that Aaron said that we do is we really go through and make sure that, all right, do you actually need this feature on? Can we turn this off? Do we need to add on additional features here? But I thought I'd show you what an intake looks like right now. And I'll be completely honest, every organization I've ever worked with at Legal Server does their intakes very differently. Sometimes they'll add additional fields, they'll add additional pages, sometimes they'll remove them. I've even had groups that even in the process of just onboarding, they've gone through 3 or 4 different versions of their intake process until they get to exactly what they want, right? Something that's got all of the fields that they need and all of the other details that they might need in the process, right? We can put in here our client, and we can put in our date of birth. Let's put 2000 as opposed to this year, and we can mark off that they don't have a social, right? We've got the ability to capture whether they're institutionalized, meaning are they currently incarcerated, and we can pick where they're currently incarcerated, or we could pick and it'll automatically populate that address. And we can also capture phone numbers, right? One of the nice things in Legal Server is that it's also tied into other systems, one of which is a text messaging system. So if we need to text our client, we can do that through the database. And it'll record both the sent text message and any replies on the client record, right? We did a search for John Doe, right? There are no other John Does in the system. But if we had a alternate name for the client, right, an alias perhaps, right? And I'm going to use test because that's an example of what's in the system, right? You can see that we've got a whole slew of other cases where the test was a client or a contact on another case or an alias in another case. And we could see, is there a relationship? Is this the second case we have for this person? Is this the 5th case? Is this the case that's opposing, where they're the victim as opposed to being the alleged individual, right? And that's all something that we can track as we go through the system. We can determine if there's a conflict or not, right? We've got the ability to put in the adverse party, right? And on our public defender cases, right, different organizations will handle it differently, and part of that is the different rules of ethics in each jurisdiction, right? What counts as an adverse party? What counts as a conflict? And one of the things that we can do when we mark off that there is an adverse party or there isn't, we can mark off that that's because there's a victim in the case, that's because there was property damage or something else that ties in why there might be a reason we can't represent the client that we're doing this intake for. We've got the ability to capture some levels on different aspects of things, right? On the civil legal side, we've got the idea of legal problem codes, right? And in the civil side, that's often bankruptcy is one problem code, debt collection is another, family law is a third, right? And we might have a whole slew of different legal problem codes. But one thing that's nice about legal problem codes is that we can say, look, this is going to be a felony, a higher level thing, and then we might have a special legal problem code that we haven't yet set up for the system that's a subcategory of that, so that we can report on both levels, on both the very micro level of this is a very specific charge, or we can say, let's look at all of our felony cases. Let's look at all of our appellate cases as a whole. And then we can record multiple charges on a case. It could always be that, look, we've got the person who's coming in because they're being charged with assault, but they may also be being charged with battery and conspiracy to commit assault and trespassing and all of those other things all in the same case. And this would let us add each of those to that case, right? We can put in here on January 1st, right? There was a gross misdemeanor, right? And we could add in, and we can make that the top charge. And then we can add in another charge on the same day saying, look, and there was also a parole violation at the same time. And then we can indicate, right? And one of the things that I know has been a question is, how do we track case workloads, right? How do we figure out at what point does a public defender have too many cases or too few cases, or how difficult those cases are? And we've integrated with a feature that we've called case credits that can say this case is worth 1 credit, this case is worth 0 credits. And that's something that we can look into configuring as things go on, right? Right now that's available in the system, that's not configured. But that's a way to weight different cases differently to figure out how those individuals and how those individuals are being served, and how your staff and your employees and contract attorneys are balancing their own workloads. Right? We've got the ability to indicate custodial status, right? To indicate, look, on the 2nd they were arrested, and right now they're on pretrial release, and we can say that it's because for these 2 charges. We've also got the ability to track very specific courts, right? We can say that, look, this is for a felony case, right? We can say that this was in, right? I don't know, Clark County District Court, right? Or whichever court it might be. And we can say that it was with a specific judge, right? In this case, our example data says it's Learned Hand who's handling the case. And I realize that's not actually the case in this instance, but we always look for some of these examples so that you can get a sense of what's going on here, right? And then the last stage of our intake is to be able to say, look, yes, we're going to take this case and it's going to be handled by, let's say, Marcy, for example, and we can indicate which office they're in. And one of the nice things about offices is that we can say, look, if you're in, Marcy can only see the cases that are in her office, right? And that's especially important as we're dealing with contract attorneys in some of the rural counties where we may not want them to have access to the full database, and that's okay. We've got those permissions and roles and restrictions built into the system, so they don't have to see everything. They can just see their little portion of it. And one of the other things that the system has is the ability to send emails right from the system, right? So we could send an email to Marcy from the system saying, hey, you've just been assigned this additional case. Please make sure you follow up within 2 days, right? And that can be tied into the case and tied into the record so that you can see when that email was sent and when there's a note saying this happened, right? And then on the case itself, we've got the ability to look at all sorts of different details on the case, right? We can see the different charges that we put here. We can see the details about the person, and we didn't capture all of these in intake, and we haven't really started customizing this page yet. So it might be that we don't need to show all of these fields. But on the other hand, we might have these fields here so that when we start running reports, we can say, look, I need to know if there was a disparity based on race in terms of how our clients were served, or is there a disparity based on gender, or is there a disparity based on disability, right? To be able to pull all of those different data points to say, look, are we serving our clients in the way that we're supposed to be serving them? We've got the ability on a case to do a lot for that case. Right? If I come up to this actions menu, I've got the ability to send text messages. We've got the ability to add documents and deadlines and events and tasks, a lot of the key things that you'll want to be able to do, right? I've got the ability to record time on a case to say, look, I'm now spending time on this case. I'm putting in an hour's worth of time, right? That I interviewed the client and it took me an hour, and this was our initial interview. And when I save that, that's in the case, and I can see, look, this case took me an hour's worth of time, right? If I click on time slips, I can see that. One other really popular feature is that each case has an email address. So, and that's unique to every single case. So if I'm working on the case and I'm working on my laptop and I want to go, all right, I was just forwarded details from the prosecutor, let me just forward this onto the case. I can just copy and paste this email address into Outlook and forward everything on, right? And then everything will appear as a case note with the attachments and everything else so that everything can be centralized and available. One other key feature that can be really helpful is that we've got a discovery log that's built into the system that lets you track the specific items of discovery and whether they were requests or responses, but you can also add in here the documents themselves and upload them into the system so that those are tied in with everything else. And we've also got the ability to track how we close the case, right? And we can standardize what that looks like as we go to close this case and we say, look, we're done, we finished everything out. And the way that this is set up is we're looking at the charges so that we can see if we need to make any changes to these. We can look at the sentencing and say, look, right, for these two charges, right, Learned Hand sentenced We can say that it included incarceration and it was 6 months of time, right? And we can add that sentence in, and we can add multiple sentences if the sentences differ or if they run concurrently or consecutively, right? We can indicate if the case has been adjudicated or if it's awaiting appeal, right? We can track all of these metrics in different ways so that everything is what it needs to be, right? That we've got a consistent method of reporting on everything, which for a lot of organizations is what they're, right? They want to be able to support their staff, their attorneys in the work that they're doing, and then they want to be able to get a consistent message out of what have we done this past year, or this past quarter, or this whole period. One of the other things that is incredibly helpful in legal servers, we've got the ability to put in what we call branch logic. And this is really saying, if this, then show me these other fields, right? And one example of that is if I say, look, this is a good story. I want to make sure that we can take this case that we handled and advertise it to all of our funders and say, look, what a great job we're doing. This was a really important case. There was some landmark issue. There was some impact element to it that we're really going to change how things happened. And if I clicked yes on this good story, I suddenly get 4 additional fields where I can type in some additional comments. And then I can always run a report on, all right, I'm looking for cases that I marked as a good story. What did I say, right? Because you never need the details of what a good story is when you're filling out the specific case. You need it 6 months later when it's time to tell the state, or it's time to tell the commission or someone else, what did we do, right? And everyone likes numbers, and numbers are great when you're talking about a few numbers, but once you start talking lots and lots of numbers, it can be really hard without that personal story. And so that's something else that we try to make easy in the system. And I know that we talked, one of the big things about Legal Server is the fact that we can pull out things in different ways. So I'm actually going to switch to a different site. This is one of our other sites that we built out, and full of demo data, not real data, but this is a way that you can monitor what's going on in the system, right? We built out this dashboard so that you can see, look, how many credits are being handled by the different divisions, or how many credits are on each attorney right now, and how many credits are there on a case. And we can see that specifically in these different types of reports, right? We can also see details about how cases started, right? How many cases are being handled by each attorney, right? And yes, we can see the data in a spreadsheet view like this, but we can also see the data in these crosstabs and summations in ways where we've already started analyzing that data within the system. And reports are one of those things that, right, Legal Server makes really easy to start generating those reports. And you can see that if I clicked on Run Case Initiation Information, that's going to open up that report in our actual reports tool. But I've also set that on that dashboard so that I could see it much more easily, that it was right there and ready for me. But I can also see it here, and I can also go into it and say, look, I actually also need to add in the question of gender, right? And I can come up to edit this report and easily add in another column, another data point, and pull that into the information that I might need. And one of the big things with reports is how flexible do they need to be? And that's always something that we rely on the organizations to tell us, what do you need? What are you looking to get out of it? And we really work to make sure that our data is accessible to you and to your staff in ways that you can say, like, look, don't just tell me about what's happening, but show me the detail. Show me how many cases are being handled. Show me what's the average hours on a case. What are the average credits on a case? Right, to pull it that way. This is a report that I built for another organization, right, that shows some of that hierarchy that I talked about earlier with legal problem codes, right? We have felonies, and then we've got totals for those felonies, but we also have the details of, right, how many of those felonies are appeals, and how many of those are non-capital felonies, and how many of those are post-conviction relief cases, right? To be able to break that down and see the details as you need to see them. And this was for a state that has a requirement of, right, how many felony case equivalents are handled in each of these, right? And that state says, look, we're going to count a felony appeal case as 1. We're going to count a misdemeanor as 0.404. We're going to count an appeal as 6, right? And so we're able to build that into the report to say, like, hey, this is what they're actually worth, and so that you can count and compare those details in that way. And one of the other things that we recognize is that sometimes, right, you've got one funder who says, I want to know about felonies and misdemeanors. And then you've got another funder who says, I want to know about appellate cases versus trial level cases, right? And we can pull the data in both ways to support both funders or both grants or both reports to be able to compare it easily, right? And if it could be that we need to remap some fields, or if we need to group some fields differently, that's something that Legal Server can do. I think one other thing that can be really important is that all of Legal Server's reports are available through a reports API. So that means that if you're using a third-party system to aggregate data, to compare reports, right, you could set this report up so that that third-party system can just make an API call and say, I need the current report, and it would get that current report if you've allowed it to do so. To be able to pull that information into that other system to make any comparisons you might need. Legal Server is also able to compare reports together from other agencies as well, right? This is a site that we built out for a New York group where they're aggregating data as well. And you can see here that we've got, and these are all different intake organizations in New York, right? These are all different legal aid organizations. You can see how many cases each organization has, or how many cases each office might have. And then you're able to put different comparisons about, well, what service did they get versus which office opened the case, or what's the dollar amount of the benefits that they've received or the hours that they've received. And you can see that there's a lot of different reports on this one set of data because, right, the filters, the data that we're pulling is all going to be the same, but we can view it in different ways as we need to view it. And then when you get down here, you can see the specific details about, right, what happened. Right, and it's all broken out here, but then it's all analyzed and grouped and sorted above. And one of the things that can happen, right, is we've got these pie charts, but we can also do bar graphs and other graphs, or, right, if you prefer making those yourself, you can always export it to Excel and look at it in Excel and build that graph out in Excel or PowerPoint or wherever you need to do that. But this is just one of those things with Legal Server that's designed to make it as flexible and useful for the end user and the end organization as it can be. And I think I just want to end by showing one last thing, which is if I switch this to the admin view, right, and this goes to what Aaron was saying, right, this is how we're no code. You can say, look, I need the date closed here, or actually, I also need the question of whether they were brought into compliance, and I can just drag that question on, and that when I click continue and save, that question is now going to show up on the form. And it's that simple for different organizations to be able to make changes to these as they need to over time. And that's really what we're trying to do, is we're trying to both empower your organization to be able to get the information it wants, right? And my role over the next couple months is to really make sure that we've got the site configured so that you're getting everything you need, so that you're collecting all the information you can collect. And then also to make sure that you've got the skills to maintain that going forward, that you can handle any changes that might come down the line, or if a new report comes out next month or next year, that you know how to build the details for that report. And for that, we do a lot of support outside of our calls, right? So we really try to make sure that once you're live with our site, you're not done with our site, that we're still going to be available as a resource, whether that's in terms of us helping with office hours, weekly trainings, annual trainings, right? We're always going to be a resource for you in your administration of that site. So that's my presentation and talk. I'm happy to answer any specific questions you've got or general questions you've got, or just turn it back over to you all.
And Professor Traum, I wanted Michael to cover one more issue. In building out the program, we had discussed that Davis requires us to create a survey to send out to individuals, and Michael was going to discuss that as well. So I'd ask if he could hit on that as well.
Sure. So I actually built that out. And so I'm going into this case, the John Doe case that I built. And this is a survey that I put on here. And if I go to special program, no. I apparently didn't link it in here, but hold on. Let me make that change real quick. But we built out a survey which is using one of the features in Legal Server called external forms. And the external forms says, hey, allow someone access to the back end of the outside of the site, right? So I can send this external form to someone who's outside the site and quickly say, come back in and authenticate that you are this person, right? Whether that's in using email or, right, you authenticate using the birth date of the person or their phone number or their zip code. And then you can say, look, now that you're authenticated, fill out these fields, right? And you can send that survey out to them using either a text message or email, or you can send that form out in paper and have a staff member retype their answers. But then once you've filled that out, you can then come back and say, look, great, thank you for filling that out. We really appreciate that, and have all that information directly in the system where you can then put it into a report. Right. What did I call it? Right, here's the send survey form. Continue. Let's go back to our case. All right, if I go to actions, I seem to have messed this up. Hold on.
And I don't know if you necessarily need to show it, but I think what we were discussing is that it's a possibility for closing a case, because we are required to distribute a survey to all defendants that are represented by indigent defense providers. When a case is closed, it would automatically send out a survey so that they could fill it out, and it would automatically go back into Legal Server. So that is another option that we can have when we're closing out cases and building the program.
Right, exactly. And that survey is part of that, right, to be available on that case level and to also be reported, right, as you would report everything else. And so I took the draft survey that Marcy sent me and was able to pull it in there and get that out to everyone as needed, right? And that can be something very basic about answering things with on a 1 to 4 scale, or it could be creating large text replies, or even signing a document saying that they affirm something is true. The external forms tool in Legal Server is actually fairly robust.
I saw that, this is Professor Traum. I saw that Hans asked a question in the chat, and I thought maybe it's a question worth answering, which is, are you entering the Nevada coded offenses like from the get-go, or is it more generic, or, you know, can you add those as they come up so that they become a coded offense in the system? Right. So we can import them as a list, right? If we start with a long list of everything, we can import them that way, or we can at this point use generic summary codes,
right? And I think part of the concern is that there's a lot of places where there's also some municipal rules at play. And when we're tying all of those things together, it can be really long in the list. And so right now we're working through the idea of just using generic items. And then if we start needing more specifics, we can always do that as well.
And Chair Trom, I think that the answer to that question also depends on the board. We have a proposal for how we would keep time and track cases. And the current proposal is a very generic sort of felony, gross misdemeanor, misdemeanor type of setup. That's approved by the board at our workshop. That's how we would set up legal server. But if the board would prefer to have them keep track specifically by NRS code or otherwise, then we'd build the system to include everything. So it's really up to the board.
So do other people have questions about the system or its application or integration? Yeah.
I didn't notice the chat earlier while I was talking, but yes, there is the ability to create a brief and motions bank for council to use.
Yeah.
You can, I didn't scroll down far enough, but we can have document templates in the system. I don't think we have any yet. That are restricted based on county or based on legal problem code or based on the language of the client. And those can either be motions or briefs, but those can also be sample letters to the client or to opposing counsel, or like a notice of appearance type document. Whatever they need to be, you can build them out and have them autofill based on data in the case.
Okay, that's helpful. I did have a question that all of this is like a case, I mean, it's meant to be data entered at the time as you move along in the case, not after the fact. But I guess I'm just wondering, what do you do if the data you're getting is about a case that's been closed already? And, you know.
Right. And so you can always set it up so that, right, that they have a sort of streamlined process where they said, look, I handled this case. Here's the basic data that I need to make sure that I'm filling out the report. And then that comes through, and right, instead of having dates that default to today, you make sure that the date fields are blank, so that, but required, so that they have to go back and say, look, this case started on January 5th and it ended on February 3rd.
And then I have another question, which is, can this system talk to other systems? Like if a court is on a case management system for the whole court, but the defense attorney is going to be on this system, is there a way to sort of import a lot of basic information so it doesn't have to be created by the, or entered by the attorney?
So all of our API integration projects tend to be very unique to each organization and each purpose, but we do have a wide number of data API integrations that I also do a lot of work with. And one of the examples is if there is, if the court knows that this case is now being referred to so-and-so, right, we do have a what we call an online intake import, which creates a new case in the system. And then you're able to then say, like, look, I don't have a conflict in this case. Give me all the data on this case, and to pull it in that way. In terms of updating existing records, that is very dependent on the specific records that you're looking for. But one thing that we do have is, like, we do have some examples of tying things in with other databases. So I'm now using one of our other databases, and I'm going to open up a case that's in New York City. Right, and here's an example of one of the integrations that we've built out with them. And because in New York City, there's a program called Just Fix, which helps renters, but they maintain a large database, right? And I actually picked the wrong case for this client. Right, I picked one that didn't have an address, and right, let's see if I can get one that does have an address. All right, so if I then come up to, I have to switch to the main profile view. right? That we can tie in this API results where it's actually going to pull all the details about who owns this property and everything else, and being able to display that for the end user. So this is pulling data into the system in a usable way, but not necessarily populating all of those fields. But we've also got the ability to, from within a legal server, to go out and say, hey, go update this record here, or go launch this other process over here, using some of the API tools that we've got built in already.
And I don't know, or Chair Trom, if your more specific question is, for example, with Odyssey by Tyler,
Right.
We did reach out to Legal Server to see if it is possible to integrate this program with Odyssey by Tyler. And my understanding is that they are interested in exploring whether or not there can be integration, and they are open to discussing that. Is that correct, Aaron?
Yep, that's exactly right. We just need to have you tell us where you need to have it happen, and some of the details about what records need to be integrated where, and the frequency, and what triggers those actions. And it's not a problem to make it happen. It's just getting into more of the details of what needs to be integrated.
Good. Okay. Do other people have questions? I can't see their faces, so. Marcy, do you have anything else that you feel like we haven't seen or talked about that needs to be?
No, but I just did want to point out that the reason that we added this to the calendar is because the board does have a duty under NRS 180.320 to require attorneys to track their time and provide reports, and also to establish standards to ensure that attorneys are tracking and reporting their information in a uniform manner. As we can all remember, we initially discussed this at the June 29th meeting, where the department provided a proposed language to require the use of Legal Server by all rural counties. The issue was tabled by Chair Kroll at the time until the September 24th meeting, where we asked for alternate proposals to be submitted by interested parties. At the September 24th meeting, we didn't receive any alternate proposals, but we did want to schedule this Legal Server demo so that the board could see what we can provide to these attorneys, and to see how Legal Server can assist us in reaching that duty of creating a standard allowing attorneys to track their time in a uniform manner. So that's why we asked the individuals from Legal Server to be here today.
Yeah, thank you for that. So if there's, speak up if I'm not seeing you, or or I'm not responding. So because it's hard to sort of see everything at the same time. But I wanted to move on. So first of all, thank you, Aaron and Michael and Steve, for being here. My understanding is we're now going to go to talking the next item, which is John McCormick, Hans Jessup, and James Popovich. I don't know if some or all of you can stay on the line, because it might be that some of their observations connect back to what Legal Server does. So that would be useful to the extent it's possible. But then if we could just go to the rest of you, John McCormick and Hans and James. Yep. Do you, I don't know if you have sorted out your own order, but I'll let you take it away and be in charge of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, we had our own order sorted out, but our Las Vegas building lost power, so Hans is running off his battery backup. So I'm going to let him go first and make his points before he runs out of battery.
That's great. Thank you.
I hope everything works all right and I'm able to get it across, but if not, I know John is intimately familiar with a lot of what we do, so he can answer questions. I oversee the research and statistics for the Nevada Supreme Court. We have what we call the Uniform System of Judicial Records, which allows us to work with all the trial courts in the state. One of the key things that allows us to get standardized data across the state or uniform statistics is the creation of a data dictionary. It defines all the terms, the types of filings, how cases are counted, how charges are counted, how a case hierarchy is established. So if you have multiple charges, felony, gross misdemeanor, through various degrees or various types, person crime, property crime, how that case ultimately gets determined and reported out based upon a hierarchy that we establish in that dictionary. We also have charge hierarchies. We have everything from bail forfeiture to jury trial disposition types. All those are determined in that dictionary, and there's a hierarchy associated with how to report the case out, even though we keep or have the courts keep a record of that on the charge level as well. We created this standardized format in 3 phases. We utilized a phased approach. The first phase was done back in 2001, which was very summary level. We kept it at felonies, gross misdemeanors, total family, total juvenile, total civil. We reported that for roughly 9 years. In 2009, we began to break out in what we called phase 2 that really expanded our detailed case types. Everything from property cases in the civil realm, divorce, custody, support matters, in civil is probate, contracts, real property, and various, even more detailed than that, different breakouts in those categories. And then in criminal, we broke it out into crimes against persons, property, domestic violence, protection order violations, drugs, traffic, DUI, things of that nature. So we had a gamut of details, and we established what we called caseload measures. We started tracking the number of pending cases, cases filed, cases disposed, cases that were reopened for some type of post-adjudication activity or modification of sentence. We also tracked cases that were inactive, and we defined inactive as in some type of warrant status or some type of diversion, things that were outside of the court's control. And so we've now expanded that into what we call phase 3, which now allows us to look at time measures. We're now starting to track the age of pending case and time to disposition. All of that phasing occurred over a 14-year period. So we really looked at this from a what can the courts do right now standpoint, and then started to build off of that once the more sophisticated systems became available, and once courts were able to move into some of those sophisticated systems. We also operated a statewide or state-sponsored case management system that the AOC helps maintain, that allowed us to capture a lot of this and move courts into those new phases. That's a little bit about my expertise and kind of what I do. As it relates to the IDC, I was one of the consultants on how to capture the IDC statistics that we captured. We took that phased approach and really built it off a summary level, what would have been a phase 1, very high level view, and most of that came from the district courts. That's one of the cons with the IDC data that we provided or we captured, is it was only basically a representative sample of the district court caseloads. It didn't really provide the full picture of the limited jurisdiction courts and the representation that was going on there. You know, as going forward and knowing some of the issues, one of the things that I'd strongly encourage is a data dictionary, creating a list of terms and the mechanism for how you want things captured. The reason for that is it allows you, when you're tracking this information, as you're going out into these different offices and you see the different counting structures, because there will be one where you'll have one court capturing or using a field one way and another court using another, you can footnote the differences because you have a standardized format that's defined. Anything that's outside of that, you can kind of footnote and see the difference in. And so that would be one of the things that I'd highly recommend in this approach. But that's a little bit about what I have and what I do. I'd love to open that up to questions if you guys have any. Happy to provide any information I can.
Questions, anyone? I guess I have one question. Oh, go ahead. Who is that?
Oh, this is Julie Kavanaugh, Bill.
Please. Go ahead.
So I did not catch the name of this last individual that is speaking.
Hans Jessup.
Hans, thank you so much. So is this data dictionary that you mentioned, is that something then that DIDS can be using too or have access to?
It is available on the Supreme Court website, and it is publicly available. Happy to share it. If I think Marcy may have seen it in the past or may have it, but if not, then I can certainly share it and forward it to her.
Okay, and you stated that you were working with the trial courts across the state, so that's all the rurals too?
Currently, the requirements for the Uniform System of Judicial Records are required by statute and by court rule. And so, yes, every court is subject to the uniform or the USGR statistical reporting requirements. I will point out we do utilize NOC codes. We work with the Department of Public Safety, and every NOC code they create for all state offenses as well as jurisdictions, we map to our specific case types so that all the courts can report the appropriate hierarchy of charges and cases.
Okay, and so right now the rural courts, regardless of which actual legal database system they're using, they're all reporting using the same kind of data dictionary, so you can have it in one place and not have to re-enter it?
They are entering it into their case management system. There's 12 different case management systems across the state. I think we have 12 different ones now. And they enter that information and report it to us based upon that dictionary. It's not that so it's more of their court processes are local to them. However, the way that gets reported, all the work that they do, the way that gets reported to us is in a standardized way based upon those dictionaries, terms, and direction.
Okay, thank you.
Madam
Chairman.
Madam Chair, may I ask Hans a question, please? Hans, you've provided us with a copy of that dictionary as well, but I think in the past, you told us how much staff you had that was necessary to input that information where everyone is allowed to use the 12 different systems. How much staff do you have that is necessary to be able to input that information?
So we do a number of different things. We have the specialty court statistics that we capture, which there's 72 different specialty courts. So we do a little bit more than just the USGR statistics, but I have a total of 3 staff, including myself.
Thank you.
You're on mute, Madam Chair.
Does anybody else have comments?
Madam Chair, if I could jump in just briefly, the initial phase, I guess phase 1 from the data dictionary was kind of the starting point that we used to build our definitions and I guess kind of generic case category collection efforts in the proposed regulation. So we do have that initial phase that came out of I think the Indigent Defense Commission, somewhere 2008, 2010. And that was kind of our starting point for our proposed regulation.
And if I may, this is John McCormick. That dictionary I think Jared was referring to that we had during the work of the Indigent Defense Commission, which is the court created in 2007. Under its administrative docket, we have attempted to collect data, particularly from Rural Contract Council, and have run into some snags with that. But as part of that effort, we did do a data dictionary for indigent defense when we were trying to develop that. And that's one of the things I think that we found out, and Hans mentioned, that the courts are not necessarily the place to collect this because, and one of the struggles we have is not everybody's data is the same. We're collecting data for different purposes. So someone providing indigent defense services wants their data to tell them different things than, say, the courts do or the DA does. And we got hung up on that a lot in the Indigent Defense Commission, and that our data sets aren't going to be the same. So, you know, you have to have that specific data set for your purpose. And so we did struggle with that. We took several runs at collecting data from particularly Rural Contract Council. We encountered resistance there. Also came to find out that data was not necessarily being reported to county commissions as was required on the previous statutory structure before DIDs existed. And we did some data collection for what we called our second rural subcommittee report. And that data collection, we published what we received, and that actually sort of backfired on us because it showed in some locations that caseloads were, and this was self-reported by either the county or the defender, caseloads were completely out of line with anything close to the ABA suggested standards. People had 600 felony cases a year plus misdemeanors. And so I think there was some blowback from that, and people became reticent to give us data again. And so we took a few other runs at collecting that data, and we ended up sending out letters under either Justice Cherry or Chief Justice's letterhead asking for that data. And it's been hit and miss. Finding out the money side, the budget side has also been somewhat of a struggle because the counties do it differently and report it differently. The best sort of chances what I think we did the best at with that is we went to the Department of Taxation's website where all the county budgets are posted, and I did a deep dive in there and tried to really pull out those public defense numbers. And I think one of the reasons USJR has worked, and Hans kind of alluded to this, is because you know, we are required to report this to the legislature by statute, and the Supreme Court has ordered all the courts to provide this data. And I think that's really where DIDS and the board has an advantage here, because you have that statutory hammer, so to speak. So people won't necessarily have as much wiggle room on that as far as reporting that. And also, you know, and James will talk a little bit about this when he talks about our drug court case management system, but the possibility of using the one system, as long as we're set up well on the beginning end, and we're talking apples to apples and everybody is using the same definitions, etc., is that it may simplify collecting that, as opposed to having a non-unified judiciary where we have all the different case management systems and those type of things. Again, I'm happy to take questions. We didn't really sort of do a full presentation because we thought the board may want to do a little bit more interaction and ask questions on this one. So,
can I, Madam Chair, at some point,
So whoever is talking, I'm happy to have you speak, but I'm actually having a little bit of trouble hearing you. So can you just say it all again, whatever you just said?
Yeah, this is Chris G. I had a question.
Perfect. Go ahead, Chris G. You're much clearer now.
I know, I was getting feedback. So the data dictionary is uniform, and we will use that application from the courts as list server moves to uniformity across all the counties.
This is John McCormick. I can take a shot. I think you'll have to have your own sort of defender specific data dictionary. And I think hopefully, you know, in sharing and working with Marcy and Jared and their team, we've kind of given them our data dictionary. So we'll have they're not starting from scratch. But again, I think you're going to have to develop your data dictionary that is specific to indigent defense data that you need to collect. But
okay,
I think the more we can sort of cooperate and use similar definitions, etc., I think the better the data is, because then we'll be able to sort of, because you're not going to be able to compare a court caseload to an indigent defense caseload straight across necessarily under this, but we're going to have an idea that we're talking, you know, apples, Fuji apples to red delicious apples, not apples to oranges.
Correct. Okay, that helps a little bit, because it does matter what terminology people use, so that we're all on the same page. So and thank you for giving Marcy and the team assistance, I guess, as they develop their Defenders Dictionary.
Oh, of course, and we're here to help. I just, on a personal note, I was staff to the Indigent Defense Commission from when it was created in 2007 until I got promoted. Then we got a replacement for that position, and then I became the AOC rep on there. So I have a vested interest in a lot of this.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, of course, but I wanted to know, Jared or Marcy, do you have a response to Christie's question? Like, it seems that part of what she's asking about is sort of how do you get it all integrated?
So I guess as I started to talk about, I guess more briefly in the prior comment, is that we used the data dictionary that came out of the Indigent Defense Commission. Again, I don't have the date in front of me, 2008, 2010, somewhere in there. And that's kind of been our starting point. So if you look in the proposed regulations, the definition of a case is consistent with what came out of that, you know, that data dictionary. Breaking down the caseload reporting, such as the beginning pending cases, the new appointments, the cases returned from warrant, is adjudicated, disposed, and how they're adjudicated, disposed, or closed. The inactive cases, again, I think Hans, pardon me, I'm sorry, you know, indicated what was inactive. We pulled from there as well. And then the cases set for review in the ending pending cases. So that's kind of, at least that initial phase has been our starting point in our proposed regulations.
So I have a question just about what you call the statutory hammer. It does require NRS 180.320D, I think it is, requires that Indigent Defense Services track and report information in a uniform manner. And it seems like what you're telling us is that the courts actually do some of this tracking at the back end based on based on the information they receive from the courts, as opposed to using something like Legal Server, which would allow a lot of this information to be tracked sort of as information is coming in and more efficiently.
Yeah, that's a good way to capture it. We have our courts, and I think Hans' battery backup just died on him, so he has left us. But yeah, we get reporting from the courts monthly. They're using our same data dictionary. A lot of case management systems now they hit a key and we get a crystal report that is basically our format and gives us our data, and they send it to us monthly. If you were to have Legal Server, you know, you could have that almost real time. As soon as it's entered in, then you have that. But I think that would be the difference there. And because you have that sort of opportunity to have everybody using the one system. But again, with all the different case management systems we have in some courts that don't really have a case management system, I'm happy to say that everybody is now using you know, spreadsheets and computerized tracking for data. We had our last holdout switch when the the previous justice of the peace retired. But you know, so to get that, but that can be a real advantage, and I think that's what James can speak to with our drug court case management system. But again, I think there are some potential pitfalls he can highlight with that.
Thank you. So I'm not seeing James. James, is he here, and does he want to add? I'm not sure.
He was on earlier. I don't know if
he is listed as here.
Oh, I'm here. I'm here. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to add.
Sure. So my experience, what we have in specialty courts, is a drug court called Drug Court Case Management. It's a software that is developed and is hosted by a company out of Alabama. A lot of states throughout the country use it for their case management system or their specialty courts. I've had the benefit of being able to use it as a primary specialty court team member while working at the Second Judicial District Court. I was actually a treatment provider before that. Some of the benefits, so that DCCM system came on board, hosted then by the AOC here in Nevada in 2014. The second JD, from my recollection, was one of the first courts to roll out and start transferring all their case information for specialty court participants from their older system. I was still with the treatment provider, but from a treatment provider and a primary court team member standpoint, I mean, the ability, you all know most of this, so I'm just kind of echoing even what was said in the earlier presentation, but the ability to communicate to all team members in one central location nearly eliminated all email and phone traffic. Information entered is used for weekly staffings and hearings as the dockets are created in DCCM. So they weren't using the crystal reports any longer. They were actually using dockets that were generated out of this system. Then moving on, working at the district court as their specialty court manager. Obviously, the ability to run reports, admissions, discharge reports, open cases, bench warrants, right there at my fingertips for any one of those 8 specialty courts was great. You know, the bench or administration or any kind of statistics that I needed for presentations, certainly monthly statistics and then quarterly statistics that were sent to AOC. The AOC, we still use those to cross-reference what we're seeing in DCCM as well. And since May, I am been working as a specialty courts statewide coordinator now at the AOC. So I'm now assigned a state administrator privilege within DCCM. Again, now I have the ability to run statewide reports. For example, during our last statewide specialty court committee meeting in July, I was able to run a report of total treatment contact hours for last fiscal year and share that with the group. It not only was helpful to see all the hours and demonstrate all the good work that was being done in specialty courts, but also highlighted which courts were not entering contact hours. So we are, in one of my initiatives now is to ensure that all the courts are entering the data. Obviously, if it's not put in, we can't get it out. Backing up a little bit, during the 78th legislative session in 2015, there was, it was unprecedented, but there was a first appropriation out of the state general fund, $3 million set aside for specialty courts. As a result, the specialty court committee, all the judges across the state, administrators and coordinators got together and created funding guidelines and criteria. Part of that criteria for funded specialty courts, funded meaning through the AOC, was to use DCCM and the different areas within DCCM, again, like treatment hours. So fast forwarding here, 5.5 years, one of my initiatives is going to be to ensure that the courts are entering all that information. So it's again, you all know most of that. It kind of speaks for itself as far as the highlights go. But it's been great, and all the specialty court information contained right there in one system for all team members. As a former clinician myself, I will say one of the things that maybe has been a challenge with that, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, is certainly confidential information and certain team members not feeling comfortable putting certain information in there, progress notes and this and that. Let's say if there's law enforcement on the team or how that information could be used. There's of course waivers that are signed, but ongoing trainings have been really helpful and beneficial to ensure that all the team members are completely aware that the information contained in the system is used appropriately, need-to-know basis, and certainly not used for new cases, which we've seen over the years too. So happy to take any questions.
And if I can piggyback on what James said, and obviously, I mean, I'm sure legal server and Michael, I believe, hit on this a little bit earlier. They can set permissions on who can see what and all that kind of stuff. And I think the biggest thing we've had with DCCM, like James said, was some courts have not been using it or entering the data in the same way as other courts do, or have been using fields slightly differently. So that's really great about what James is doing, is getting everybody on the same page to use the system the same, which then increases your confidence in that data exponentially.
Are there specialty courts in the rurals?
Yes, we've got specialty courts in, I think, every rural district. Through the 7th Judicial District has their own, the 4th does, the 11th, the 6th do, the 3rd and the 1st and the 9th and part of the 5th use the Western region.
Yeah.
And then there's other specialty courts in Nye County. So yeah, if you're in any county in the state, you can be covered by a specialty court, just depending. And we also have just another random FYI, did some work a couple legislative sessions ago to make transferring participants between specialty court programs a bit easier. So when Carson City had a defendant that could have really benefited from one of James's programs when he was with the 2nd, we tried to create a better framework so that transfer could happen more easily.
All right. Are there questions? I can't see people, so it would be great if you have a question to just raise your voice.
This is Chris. Just a very good presentation. I think you all are the experts and have to use this. So hopefully our staff and folks feel comfortable that we'll gather what we need, that the urban and rural areas are comfortable as well. But I think the key piece, no matter what, is the uniformity of everything.
Right, and I think our experience is obviously the institutional offices in the 2nd and the 8th in the urban jurisdictions, and then with Drew is the appointed council administrator and also the contract administrator the 2nd has. There's been a lot greater data uniformity already in those offices that kind of are further along in terms of collecting that data. So you just want to make sure that you're all speaking the same sort of language with them. But again, just from my experience, it's getting the data from the rural jurisdictions is the biggest challenge.
Marcy or Jared, do you have anything to add before we close up on this discussion?
Madam Chair, I wanted to add one thing, or a couple of things after Mr. Popovich did speak. Just like his software program, Legal Server will allow us to put certain notes at the top of everyone's page. So if there's a notice that we need to send to all of the attorneys, we can simply put it on the page so everyone can see it, rather than being required to send out emails or to call everyone. So it's an effective way to get out notices, just like the specialty courts are doing. Just like the specialty courts, it would allow us to do real time, where we could pull up and see what certain attorneys are doing and see if there's issues with caseloads, rather than having a delay of having the information input. As all the board members know, our department is very small, and we don't have 3 employees that are able to put in data similar to what the administrative office of the courts does to enter that data for the 12. So I think it would obviously be more effective for us if it's automatically put in for us, and then we can just pull the data like the specialty courts does. And of course, the final highlight is that having data that we can rely on will be very valued when we go in front of the legislature to ask for funding. And I think, James, I don't know, when we were talking, you were highlighting that because you had effective data, you were able to get additional funding for your specialty courts because you had the data to back it up. And that's something that we're hoping with indigent defense, that we can give the legislature something that has value. We can say we stand behind it, and we can say that there is that uniformity, everyone's doing it the same, and we should rely on it. So that's why our department is encouraging the use of Legal Server for all of the reasons that the AOC has pointed out, as well as what Legal Server did touch on.
And if I can piggyback and provide a little more information there, this is McCormick again. as we've evolved and gone through the phases, and because of the unique skill sets of some of our staff, we've been able to automate some of that data entry. And that's what I think Hans alluded to a little bit earlier when he said his team does other things. We've been able to automate that, create macros to pull from Excel into SPSS and everything that we use to track. But initially, you know, when we were doing those first phases, it was labor intensive, heavy data entry for those folks. And so, you know, we're farther along and they're able to do other projects and generate our annual report and look at some other things because we've worked through that. So starting, you know, from day one, it would be a lot of sort of just data entry and staff time for that.
Those are all really helpful points. I would just add to what our executive director said, that in addition, if you're ever going to try to get grants or to fund a pilot program or to fund an extra fellow position because of an under a grant, you're just going to need this data to do it and then to show that you've done it. So being able to get your hands on that is just going to be really empowering in that way, I think. It's all really helpful. Does anybody else have any comments? And again, raise your voice because I'm not seeing people here. So anyone else? Okay, thank you so much all for coming and organizing those presentations and giving us that really, really useful perspective. We really appreciate it. I'm going to move on to, I think number 9 is our next meeting. So I think what we have, well, actually, I feel like we should just, before we have our next meeting, we're having our workshop, which is on December 2nd. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, that is correct, but the workshop will also be our December meeting. So it is a regular board meeting / workshop filed for December 2nd.
Okay, so what we're going forward, we'll next see each other on December 2nd, which will be our workshop. Do you want to say anything about the workshop?
What we'd like to point out is that we have posted the LCB file number 42-20, which will be the topic of that workshop. What our department has done is on November 6th, we did email out, you know, where we were at with some possible changes that we'll be recommending. We've been working extremely hard, talking to judges, talking to county managers, and we've made additional changes after those discussions. So what Patrick, Jared, and I are hoping is that on Monday, we will have our final proposals of what we would like to set forth as possible changes to the Legislative Council file and the reasoning for it. So we will be sending that out to all the interested parties on our list, and we are expecting that to happen on Monday. So if anyone would like to discuss any of those items, we are available, so we'll meet with anyone. And we did want to do a short synopsis for the board members so they can understand the reasoning behind each section that we're going through. So we'll be providing that as well.
That's great. Okay, so we will next see each other on December 2nd, which just as a reminder is a Wednesday, and we're starting in the morning in order to give whatever time we need to the workshop agenda, right? So that we'll have plenty of time. So it's a little bit unclear how long that will last. We are going to vacate the meeting on December 18th, which was on the calendar. So we will not meet twice in December, just on the 2nd. And then I believe our next meeting is slated for January 28th in the new year. That's a Thursday at 1 p.m. So hopefully that works for everybody. By that meeting, yeah, we should be further along, sort of, you know, looking forward to the legislative session and have more information about that. So any items? Go ahead.
For the December 2nd, we were told to block out from 9 to 5. Is that still appropriate?
I think that's still appropriate. We don't know how long it will take. So I think the idea is block it out. We'll obviously move along. It may be that I suspect we won't need all of that time, but it's hard to know what we'll need. So thank you. Are there any items for a future agenda that we can take note of now?
No, but Madam Chair, it's Joni Eastley in Tonopah. I do have one question. Just to confirm with Marcy, there will be an updated copy of the regs coming out before our workshop, correct?
That's correct, Joni. What our goal is on Monday to release our final draft, or where we are on Monday, of changes that we would recommend be made to those proposals.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So no one else on future agenda items? Okay, moving on. We have time again for public comment. Do any of our guests who are on the line have public comment to make? Okay, hearing none. Would anyone like to move to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second, Chris.
All right, the board members in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed to adjournment? Good.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you again so much.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to see us today.
Stay well.
Good to see everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.